Today we're going to be talking about the most common mistakes that quarterbacks will make. Now, the first mistake that I see a lot of quarterbacks make is that when they start their throw, they lift the ball directly up to this 90-degree angle. Now, the problem with that, you guys, is that when your hips and your core, because as a quarterback, we're a rotational athlete, all of my throw power comes from my hips, my legs, and my core. When you lift directly to 90 degrees and you start to rotate, that ball can dip behind your head and put a lot of unnecessary pressure on your shoulder, and sometimes that can cause quarterbacks to lean out with their head, causing this overly high release point, and that makes them miss high and low on throws. So where we want to get to, you guys, is some position called opposite equal. When you take a step to the target, you want your front arm and your back arm at an opposite equal position, aka opposite L. So when you're at this opposite L position, now when your hips rotate through, that still brings you to this 90-degree angle. The ball's not ripping behind your head, your release point's at a more controlled spot, and we can be more consistent with my throws. Now, the second mistake that I'll see quarterbacks make, which makes them throw a bad spiral, is when they go to that opposite L position. And remember, guys, it doesn't need to be a perfect L. It could be a slight angle in, maybe a little bit lower, wherever you're most comfortable, but just not straight up. But a lot of guys, when they get to that opposite L, they'll turn the nose of the football straight up in the air. So when they decide to rotate through, that ball almost comes off their hand like this, where they're pushing the ball, and that leads to a very, very bad spiral. So guys, when you go back with the ball, try to keep your palm parallel to the ground the best you can. If your palm is facing behind you, that causes the nose to pop up. But if your palm is parallel to the ground, when you decide to rotate through, you can keep a more stable wrist position, which will help you snap and get better spin on your throws. Now, fellas, we just released our schedule for our next 3 camps this upcoming off season. We're going to be coming out to San Francisco, California, Orlando, Florida, and then Phoenix, Arizona. So if you guys want to get early access to those 3 camps and sign up, all of our camps this past year sold out within the first 3 to 4 months of us releasing the dates. Check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you there for our 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camp. So again, guys, we're coming out to San Francisco, California, Orlando, Florida, and Phoenix, Arizona. So very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. Now, the next mistake that quarterbacks will make, which can cause them to throw a bad spiral again, is when they release the ball. Even if you have a good backstroke, even if your palm is parallel to the grass like we were talking about, when you release, guys, and you snap your wrist, but your palm is facing upward, that's going to cause that ball to almost curve. Guys, when we release the ball, everybody talks about, oh, quarterbacks want to flick their wrist. That's how you get the proper spin. You do want to flick your wrist, but you almost want to turn your palm away from your body. That will help us get to a point called extension, which is where your wrist, elbow, and shoulder are parallel, or not parallel, but in a straight line towards the target. So guys, let's not be here ripping across with my palm up. Let's snap my wrist and turn my palm outward, get that nice clean spin, and to help that ball roll off my index finger, which is my spiral finger. Now, the next mistake the quarterbacks will make is being a thermometer leader. What does that exactly mean? So there's 2 types of leaders in the locker room as a quarterback. You have thermostat leaders, and then you have thermometer leaders. So what does a thermostat do? You set the temperature of the room. What does a thermometer do? It tells you the temperature of the room. So a lot of young guys, especially underclassmen, will get into a locker room situation and they just kind of try to blend in and fit in with everybody. Guys, that's not what a college coach looks for in a leader. That's not what a high school coach looks for in a leader. And as a quarterback, guys, whether you like it or not, you are the leader of the entire team, and everybody's eyes are on you, whether you know it or not, or whether you like it or not. So when you go into a situation like that, you have to set the tone of the room. Be a thermostat leader. You lead by example. You show up to lift. You go, a lot of times quarterbacks are very lazy in the gym because they think they're quarterbacks. I don't got to do this stuff. You lead by example. In conditioning, workouts, you should try to be first in everything. You got to complete all your reps. You have to make sure you get after it. And then in practice, you have to stay after. Stay after with the receivers. Stay after with your center. Put in that extra time because that will elevate the level of the team. Be a thermostat leader. Set the bar here and try to expect that your team gets up to that bar. Don't have the bar be here and you just stay there because you're worried about what other people may think, or you're worried about fitting in with the team. Now, the next mechanical mistake that quarterbacks will make with their throwing motion is pushing off of their back foot to create their front stride. So guys, as quarterbacks, we always want to try to get to a position of hip and shoulder dissociation. More importantly, upper body and lower body dissociation. Dissociation is a fancy word for separation. You want to think of throwing a football a lot like hitting a baseball. I'll get into that in a second. But you have to understand, guys, as quarterbacks, everybody throws the ball differently. You look at all 32 NFL starters, they all throw it differently, but they're all insanely talented. But the things that they have in common is what we try to emphasize with our mechanics. And what most guys have in common is that when they take a stride to the target with their front foot, because obviously that's how the throw goes, you take a step, they don't transfer their weight on the step because that prevents them from getting to that separation position. Think about it like a baseball swing, like I mentioned. Somebody throws a pitch, they take a step to the pitcher, but they keep the bat here. They keep their head stacked on top of their knee and their foot. Their weight stays back. So they can take that weight, transfer it through, the bat trails behind, and that's what caused that ball to jump off of their bat. That's exactly how quarterbacks generate power. So when we're in our base, guys, we want to think step, not push. I want to step, get the front foot anchored, so now when I go back with the ball and get to my opposite L, my shoulders, my upper half can dissociate, separate from my lower half. My lower half's going towards the target, but my upper half is staying separate, staying back. So now I take that weight from my back leg, my hips, my core, and I go to rotate, and that comes through before the arm, creating a whipping effect, which will give me more velocity and more power on the ball. So QBs, don't push to create the stride. Step, get anchored, then push after your stride's already down. Now, the next mistake that quarterbacks will make when it comes to the mental side of the game is being too emotional with play results. So you never want to let the result of a play dictate how you feel after a play. You always want to have that mindset, whether it's a good or bad result. Okay, I'm on to the next play. What's my job as a quarterback on the next play? Because all it comes down to, guys, is doing your 1/11th. As a quarterback, we tend to worry about a lot of things. You know, the crowd, we worry about my offensive line blocking, receivers catching the ball. At the end of the day, you got to laser focus on what your job is. And your job is to complete the ball, make the right read, get the ball out on time. That's literally your entire job, and that's what we should be focused on in a nutshell. So a lot of guys, when they throw a 50-yard touchdown pass, they're all jacked up, they're fired up, then the next play they come out, they're all fired up, but what's inevitable about the quarterback position? Mistakes. That's inevitable about anything. You're gonna make mistakes. So then you throw a bad pass, let's say you throw a pick six, and your emotion, you're just on this roller coaster with your emotions for 4 quarters, and that's not a good mental state to be in, and that's not the best mental state to be in for optimal performance on the field. So when you throw a pick six, you're gonna get super down on yourself, then what's gonna happen? You're gonna come out there and you're gonna bring that with you to the next play. We should be unemotional with the result of the play. It's a pick six, we go learn from it, we have the same mindset as if I threw a 50-yard touchdown pass. Right after I walk to the sideline, the play's over and we're on to the next. You're only successful when you perform a successful act. You're only a failure when you fail at a specific act. The next play is what matters the most. Now, the next mistake that quarterbacks will make is not loving the lonely work. So what do I mean by the lonely work? A lot of quarterbacks will make the excuse of, oh, well, I don't have any receivers to throw to, you know, I don't have this, I don't have that, what do I do? You gotta love the lonely stuff, you guys. And playing the quarterback position requires an insane amount of work. It's a huge workload that you have to do because you have so much to worry about. You gotta read the defense, you gotta have the right play call, you gotta make the right read, you gotta throw an accurate pass, you gotta have the right footwork, you gotta have the right drop, you need to be a leader of the team, you need to have confidence. There's so much that goes into it, so you gotta love those little details. So like little details, I mean, like if you're working on your throwing form, for example, there are so many drills that you can do and so many drills that we have on our channel. If you want those types of drills, just post them in the chat below or post them in the comment section below and I'll get them to you. I'll send you guys a link over to the videos I'm referencing. But like if you're working on your throwing mechanics, there's so many things you could do without a ball. Working a hip walk, you guys have all seen Dak Prescott do those types of drills. Work at different drills to work on your rotation, different towel throws. You have to love those little details because those little details and those reps stack load onto what you're actually doing with a ball. So make sure you love the details, guys, of the position, because if you don't, it's going to be very hard to have any success long term. Now also, fellas, if you're a quarterback and you would like to know what specifically you should do on a day-to-day basis in terms of the lonely work or throws that you could work with your receiver, check out that very first link in the description below for our Elite Quarterback Training Package. What you'll get access to is 2 months of daily quarterback on-field workouts. So we break it down: Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing that, Wednesday this, with the exact sets and reps and video examples of each drill so you know what to do. So if you guys would like a day-to-day schedule, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get back to this video. Now, the next mistake, and we briefly touched on this earlier in this video, is not understanding how much work it takes to play the quarterback position and fix a bad habit. I'm sure you guys have all probably heard like the 10,000 hour rule. Well, for quarterbacks, I feel there's a 10,000 rep rule. 10,000 hour rule means if you put in 10,000 hours of a specific task, of a specific skill, you're gonna become an expert at that. 10,000 hours is a very long time. Now, they say 10,000 reps for a quarterback is the exact same thing. You do 10,000 reps of a specific throwing motion, you're gonna master that throwing motion, and that's gonna be your throwing motion. Now, a lot of quarterbacks don't understand how many reps it takes to break a bad habit. It takes 1,000 reps to break a bad habit. So for example, let's say your bad habit is when you throw, you have this really long looping motion. So there's 2 types of reps that you could do as a quarterback. You could do random training, which is like 7-on-7. You drop back, a read happens, and you gotta set your feet and you gotta throw. You're not thinking about your mechanics, you're training a reaction. And then there's something called block training, which is where you're thinking about a specific skill, like you dropping your arm, so you're repping out consistently, get to the L, higher release point, holding the ball higher, whatever it is, right? So a lot of quarterbacks don't understand the amount of reps that it takes to fix those types of bad habits. It takes 1,000 reps to break a bad habit, 10,000 reps to master a specific skill. So a lot of quarterbacks in the offseason, they do the wrong damn things. They'll come up and they'll just think, oh, I just got to play 7-on-7, I'll get better this way, when they have so many mechanical flaws, especially you 12 and under quarterbacks. I really don't even like 7-on-7 for 12 and under, because when you're playing 7-on-7, you ain't thinking about your mechanics. When you're throwing to receivers, you're not thinking about your mechanics. Maybe a little bit, but you're worried about getting the ball there. And again, I understand that's what 7-on-7 is about, and some guys get a lot of benefit out of that, but some people need to do more block reps, more block training. So understand the amount of work that it takes. That's the lonely work. If you're working on a bad habit, how many times can I do 1,000 reps? Can you do 1,000 reps in a week, Monday through Sunday? I believe you can, and that's just a faster way to break a bad habit and improve your skills. But you need to understand how much work this position requires and give this position the respect that it deserves. Now, the next mistake that quarterbacks will make when it comes to reading defenses is not having a pre-snap process. So what do I mean by pre-snap process? Guys, let's say we got a play concept, and let's say, you know, it's like, let's say it's a smash concept, for example. A smash concept is where, like, let's say we have 2 receivers on the left side of the field. My outside receiver is running a 5-yard hitch. My slot receiver is running like a 10 to 12-yard corner, right? So on that play, we know we're reading the corner on the outside. So a lot of quarterbacks will get caught up at, okay, we have smash, all right, let's go. Let's set hike, and then they go, and then they're reading the corner, right? You're always gonna be a step behind if you don't have a pre-snap process to identify the coverage. If you identify the coverage first, you could be a step ahead and know what the defense is doing before they even do it, or you may be more aware of how they're trying to disguise a certain coverage based off of film study, and we'll get to that in a second. So when you come up to the ball, you need a pre-snap process to identify the coverage. So my process is I'm looking at the safeties. How many are there? Are there 2? Are there 1? Are there 0? Are they in a back pedal stance? Are they in a squatted stance? Are they wide outside the hash? What are the safeties looking like? And I'm using that as a process of elimination to determine what coverage they're in. If those 2 safeties are really wide outside the hash, back pedal stance, okay, it looks a little bit like cover 2. The corners will lie to you, but that's who I get to next. I look at the corners. Are they pressed? Are they 7 yards off? Do they look like they're bailing? Do they look like they're just in man-to-man right in front of the guy? And then I look to the box. Are they bringing me pressure? Is it a 4-3? Is it a 4-4? What is it? I use all of that process of elimination. That tells me what the coverage is, and then I worry about my coverage read, like the corner. So if I see it's cover 2, I know that that corner most likely is going to sit in the hitch, so I'm a step ahead of the defense with my feet, with my read, and with the ball. Now, the next mistake that quarterbacks will make, and I briefly just touched on it, is not watching enough film. I'm going to give you guys the exact process of how I would watch film and how much film it takes to understand a defense, to understand a team that you are playing that week. Now, I understand some of you guys may be younger and you don't have access to this type of film, but this information is only going to help you when you get to the high school level, so you know how to prepare. I think that was the biggest thing that I had to learn when I first started playing varsity ball, was knowing how to prepare, and especially with college ball, knowing how to prepare for those certain elements. So, number one, what I would do is I would go through, let's say I was playing a team, let's say this is like I played a game on Friday, so that Saturday, that Sunday, you don't have school, you're at home, and then you get different games of film for the team that you're playing the following week, right? And let's say I have 3 games of film. So it's 3 games that that team played earlier in the year. What I would do is I would watch all 3 of those games, just the defensive clips. If you're a quarterback, I wouldn't really worry about anything else. I would just watch the defensive clips. So it goes by decently fast, but I'd watch all 3 of those games one time. I wouldn't pause it. I would just watch it and take notes of what I would see. Then I would go back and I would watch the first game over and over again. And I would slow it down, break it down, and I would try to identify their top coverages. So I'd say, okay, they come out in cover 2. They came out in cover 2 this game 40 times. They came out in cover 3 10 times. So I'd try to figure out what their defense likes to run and what their bread and butter would be. And I would do that for each one of those games. And then third time what I would do, and this is again, you still watch it throughout the week leading up to the game. This is just how you start the process. But then third what I would do is I would go through each play on each individual game, slow it down, and I would work different offensive concepts in my playbook that I would like against that defense. So for example, that smash concept, I would look at, okay, I'd be reading this, I'd be doing this, and I would just kind of mentally visualize how I would go through my reads and my progressions versus those coverages. Then I would repeat that process over and over again throughout the week. Monday would come around, we'd have practice, we'd get a practice plan from our coaching staff, and they would tell us, hey, these are the plays that I would like. So I would laser focus in on those plays and watch those games of film again and run those plays against those coverages that they like to run. Usually we were kind of on the same page because I felt I had a good handle on the offense, but if you don't and your coaches like certain things, you like certain things, it's always good to communicate with them. But you need to study film. You need to if you're a quarterback, you should watch the most film on your entire team, no exceptions.